The new projector screen I'd just installed was being systematically harassed by the kid upstairs and his laser pointer. When I went up to talk to them, his dad just shrugged.
He's just a kid having fun. How much can that piece of crap cloth be worth anyway?
The next day, his kid used a high-powered laser to burn several holes straight through my screen. I didn't call the cops. Instead, I silently replaced the expensive screen with a custom-made mirror, adjusted the angle perfectly, and aimed it right back at their window. Now, his son can play with laser reflections in his own home, all day long. At 6 in the evening, I drew the blackout curtains in my living room to start my workday. I'm a film colorist, and I work from home. My living room is my studio. To get the most accurate color reproduction possible, I'd spent $2,000 importing a top-of-the-line, professional-grade screen from Germany. To me, that screen wasn't just equipment. It was how I made a living. I fired up the projector in my rig, ready to do a fine-tuning pass on some footage I'd just received for a new feature film. Suddenly, a blindingly bright red dot appeared, uninvited, right in the center of the frame. The dot danced around like an annoying mosquito, jumping all over the lead actress's face, gleefully ruining the delicate color balance I'd spent hours calibrating. My blood pressure spiked. I walked over to the window, pulled back a corner of the curtain, and looked up. In the window of 6B, one floor above me, a little head was peeking out, holding a laser pointer. I knew that kid. He belonged to the Millers upstairs. Kyle Miller, 9 years old, and the undisputed terror of the entire condo building. A hot flash of anger shot through my chest. I shut down my equipment, swallowed my rage, and walked upstairs to knock on 6B's door. The man who answered was Kyle's dad, Kevin Miller. He was a guy in his early 40s with a beer gut and the faint smell of stale Bud Light clinging to him. I tried my best to keep my tone civil. "Hey, Kevin, I'm Ethan from downstairs. Could you please ask your son not to shine his laser pointer into my window? That's a very expensive professional screen. He could damage it, and it's making it impossible for me to work." Kevin eyed me up and down, a look of undisguised contempt on his face. He yelled back into the apartment.
Kyle, knock it off.
Then he turned back to me and gave me a condescending smirk.
He's just a kid, man. Doesn't know any better. It's not a big deal.
He clapped me on the shoulder, his sense of oily superiority washing over me.
Besides,
He said, gesturing dismissively,
it's just a piece of cloth. What's it worth? A few bucks. If he breaks it, I'll pay you for it. Simple.
In that moment, I felt my knuckles go white. I looked at his face, a perfect mask of indifference and condescension, and knew that saying anything else would be a waste of breath. I took a deep breath, turned, and walked back downstairs. Back in my apartment, I stared at the lingering red afterimage on my screen. It didn't feel like light. It felt like a slap in the face. The harassment didn't stop. If anything, my visit made it worse. Starting the next day, as soon as I drew my curtains to work, the red dot would appear like clockwork. It wasn't random anymore. It was targeted, provocative. It would settle precisely on an actor's face that I needed to color grade or trace circles around the names in the rolling credits. It was as if Kyle had found a new, more engaging video game. My productivity plummeted. I made several critical color timing mistakes that forced me to redo hours of work. I tried texting Kevin, but he either ignored me or replied with a curt K, followed by silence. I'd had enough. I decided to take it to the community Facebook group. In the 500-member Lakeshore Residences community group, I posted a message, keeping it as polite and restrained as I could. At Kevin Miller, Unit 6B, "Hey Kevin, just wanted to follow up again. Your son is still shining a laser into our apartment, and it's become a serious disruption to my work and our quiet enjoyment. I'd really appreciate it if you could address this with him. Thanks." The group was silent for a few seconds. Then, a familiar profile picture popped up. It was Kevin's wife, Karen. She didn't type. She dropped a 60-second voice memo, her voice shrill and dripping with manufactured outrage.
Excuse me? Are you serious right now? A grown man calling out a child online? My son was curious, so he pointed a little light at your window. That's it. First you come banging on our door, and now you're trying to publicly shame us? What, are you trying to bully a mother and her child now? Is that what this is?
I froze. Kevin was a 6-foot-tall slab of a man. How did they become a helpless mother and child? Her performance wasn't over.
You have your curtains drawn all day. Who knows what kind of shady stuff you're doing in there? Maybe you're the one we should be worried about. Kyle is an innocent child. Don't you dare project your twisted, adult world onto him. And for God's sake, he just shined a light on it. Is that precious cloth of yours made of solid gold or something? Get over yourself.
That phrase, precious cloth, hit me like a needle to the ear. Her tirade of lies and accusations successfully stirred the pot. A few of her cronies from the building's social committee immediately jumped in to support her. You tell him, Karen. Some people have way too much time on their hands. Seriously, a grown man picking on a little boy. So pathetic. Hey now, let's all just try to be good neighbors. No need for all this hostility. I stared at the accusations piling up on my phone screen, my hands shaking with anger. I couldn't believe it. A simple attempt to protect my property had turned into a public witch hunt against me. For the first time, I understood what it felt like to be completely railroaded. I didn't reply. I shut off my phone and sat in the dark, listening to the heavy thud of my own heart. I realized then that reasoning with this family was a dead end. 3. I decided to take a step back. If talking was useless, I'd resort to the simplest solution, a physical barrier. I spent over $100 on the thickest, double-layered, thermal-insulated blackout curtains I could find online, advertised to block 9% of all light. They arrived and were installed the next day. I drew both the new and old sets of curtains, plunging the living room into absolute pitch-black darkness. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. There, I thought. That should do it. The first 2 days were blissfully quiet. The annoying red dot was gone. I even felt a sliver of hope that maybe they'd gotten bored and given up. But I was naive. I had severely underestimated the destructive capacity of a spoiled brat and the parents who enabled him. On the third afternoon, I was in the kitchen making dinner. Suddenly, a strange, acrid smell drifted in from the living room. It was a distinct smell of burning plastic, mixed with a chemical tang. My stomach dropped. I sprinted into the living room. I ripped open the heavy curtains. The sight before me made the blood drain from my face. My limbs went cold. There on my pristine, perfectly white German screen were 5 or 6 black holes, each the size of a pea. The edges of the holes were singed yellow, and a faint wisp of smoke was still rising from them. My $2,000 screen was destroyed. I ran to the window and looked up. The curtains in 6B were drawn. I couldn't see anything, but I knew it was them. A regular laser pointer couldn't do that kind of damage. This had to be something much more powerful. An industrial-grade laser, maybe even one of those high-wattage burning lasers you can buy illegally online. I immediately went to the small security camera I'd installed in the corner of the living room for security. It was pointed directly at my screen and the window. I rewound the footage to that afternoon. It didn't take long to find the evidence. In the video, a beam of light, almost invisible to the naked eye, but immensely more powerful than before, shot down from the direction of the upstairs window. The beam held steady on one spot on the screen. After a few seconds, the spot began to smoke, then slowly turned black, and finally, a hole burned straight through. The whole process took nearly a minute. This wasn't a prank. This was deliberate, malicious destruction of property. I watched the video of that devastating beam and stared at the ugly scars on my screen, my body trembling with a rage so intense I could barely control it. It erupted in my chest like a volcano, burning away the last of my patience. I didn't storm upstairs to confront them, and I didn't call the police. Because I knew, with people like that, the cops would just mediate. They'd be forced to pay for it, and that would be the end of it. But I wanted more than just money. I wanted them to pay a real price for what they'd done, a lesson they would never forget. I calmly shut off the camera and removed the memory card. Then I opened my laptop, went to Google, and slowly, deliberately typed in a few words. Large format, high reflectivity, first surface mirror. The game was about to change. I didn't confront the Millers. I didn't post another word in the Facebook group. I went about my life as if nothing had happened. My strange silence seemed to unnerve Karen. She even posted a passive-aggressive comment in the group. Wonder why it's so quiet downstairs all of a sudden? Hope he's not cooking up some crazy scheme. I ignored her. All my energy was focused on my plan for revenge. First, I carefully detached the ruined screen from the wall. I rolled it up, wrapped it in protective plastic, and stored it in a closet. It was Exhibit A. Next, I precisely measured its dimensions, 7. 2 feet long, 4. 1 feet wide. Now, I needed to find the perfect weapon to replace it. My first thought was simple, just hang a regular mirror. But I quickly dismissed that. A standard mirror's reflectivity isn't high enough, and glass can shatter, making it a safety hazard. I needed a smart bomb, something that could return the laser's energy with near-perfect efficiency. As I was trying to figure it out, I remembered someone, Mr. Peterson, who lived up on the 17th floor. Pete was a retired high school physics teacher. He'd taught optics for 30 years and was a total tech geek who loved tinkering with gadgets. I'd run into him in the elevator a few times, and he'd struck up a conversation about the blue light blocking coating on my glasses. He'd left a strong impression. On a whim, I bought a nice bottle of wine and knocked on his door. Pete's apartment looked like a small science museum. A telescope stood by the window, and his bookshelves were crammed with textbooks and scientific journals. I told him the whole story, from the initial laser harassment to my screen being burned. When I finished, Pete slapped his thigh in anger.
That's outrageous. That Kevin Miller and his family have been bullying people in this building for years. This isn't just a prank anymore, Ethan. This is willful destruction of private property. It's a crime.
When I told him about my mirror revenge plan, Pete's eyes lit up. He adjusted his glasses, a spark of academic excitement on his face.
My boy, that is a brilliant idea,
he exclaimed.
It's a classic case of giving them a taste of their own medicine, but the physics version.
He immediately pulled me over to his desk, spread out a large sheet of paper, and started sketching diagrams.
See, a regular mirror won't do. We need what's called a first surface mirror, or an optical mirror. The reflective coating is on the front surface of the substrate, not behind it. It eliminates ghosting and can have a reflectivity of over 95%. And the angle is crucial. You're on the 5th floor. They're on the 6th. The height difference is about 9 feet. We'll need the precise horizontal distance from your wall to their window. According to the law of reflection, the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. We can calculate the exact tilt of the mirror to ensure the beam travels right back where it came from, directly into their window.
Pete grew more and more animated, as if this weren't about revenge, but about conducting a rigorous scientific experiment. Under his expert guidance, my plan became clearer, sharper, and more perfect. I needed a custom-built, large-format, high-reflectivity optical mirror calculated to the precise angle for perfect retribution. With Pete's help, I quickly found an online company that specialized in custom optical instruments. I gave them my specifications, dimensions, material, desired reflectivity. After hearing my request, the representative on the phone paused. "Sir, is this for some kind of large-scale laboratory experiment?" I was intentionally vague. Something like that. A research project on light pollution. In the end, I paid $500 for a custom-cut 7, 2x4, 1-foot acrylic optical mirror. It used a dielectric coating that gave it a reflectivity of 98%, and it was lighter and safer than glass. During the 3 days I waited for the mirror to be fabricated, I kept busy. Using a laser distance measure, I got the exact vertical and horizontal distances between my wall and their window. Pete plugged the numbers into a series of trigonometric and optical formulas, calculating a precise tilt angle for me. 5 degrees. As long as my mirror was mounted at that exact angle, any light beam coming from Kyle Miller's room will be sent straight back to its source. To make my plan even more foolproof, I bought a tiny vibration sensor online. I planned to attach it to the back of the mirror. The sensor connected to an app on my phone. The constant impact of high-energy photons from a laser beam would create a micro-vibration on the mirror's surface, triggering an alert and notifying me instantly. That way, I'd know exactly when the enemy was making a move. 3 days later, the mirror arrived. It came in a massive wooden crate. I couldn't wait to open it. The surface was as smooth as still water, gleaming with a cold, metallic luster that seemed to reflect a person's very soul. It was a work of art, an art piece born for vengeance. I didn't make a fuss. I waited until late at night and hired 2 handymen to come and install it. I told them it was a piece of modern art and had to be mounted at a very specific angle. They thought it was odd, but for the right price, they did exactly as I asked. Using heavy-duty brackets, they secured the mirror firmly to my living room wall in the exact same spot where the screen had been, tilted at 5 degrees, not a fraction more or less. Once it was up, I drew the curtains, and the mirror was completely hidden from view. From the outside, my apartment looked exactly the same. Finally, I attached the small vibration sensor to the back and synced it with the app on my phone. Everything was ready. I sat on my couch, staring at the app's interface on my screen, and felt a profound sense of calm. I had set a trap, a perfect, seamless trap built on the principles of physics and modern technology. Now, all I had to do was wait for my unsuspecting prey to walk right into it. I waited for 2 days. During that time, all was quiet, not a peep from upstairs. I even started to wonder if they'd finally gotten bored of their little game. Then, on the 3rd afternoon, I was in my home office answering emails. My phone, sitting on the desk, suddenly buzzed twice. A bright red notification banner flashed across the screen. It was the sensor app. The message was just 3 words: high-frequency vibration detected. He's back. My heart gave a single, hard thump, but it was immediately replaced by a feeling of cold, sharp excitement. I knew Kyle Miller, the little monster, was at it again. I didn't rush into the living room to look. I didn't even get up from my chair. I just leaned back, closed my eyes, and waited. In my mind, I pictured it all. That malicious beam of light, traveling through the air, aimed at my window. It pierced my curtains, striking the cold, unforgiving surface of the optical mirror. Then, governed by the immutable laws of physics, 98% of its energy was reflected, without mercy, back along a 5-degree angle. Its new destination, the exact point from which it came, the window of apartment 6B. Sure enough, less than 30 seconds later, a child's terrified scream ripped through the ceiling. It was high-pitched and sharp, filled with a sudden, primal fear. It was immediately followed by Karen Miller's frantic shouting.
Kyle. What's wrong? Your eyes. What happened to your eyes?
Then came the crash of a chair falling over, the sound of something shattering, and then chaos. I could picture the scene perfectly. Kyle, smugly aiming his laser cannon at my apartment. And then, in an instant, an identical, blindingly bright beam shooting back at him, catching him square in the eye. Even if it was just for a second, the shock of that intense, unexpected light would be enough to scare him half to death. Perhaps that focused energy had even ignited something near him, like his favorite Captain America action figure, or the new throw pillow on his mom's sofa. I sat there in my chair, a cold smile touching my lips. This was just the appetizer. The main course I had planned for them was still to come. The chaos upstairs continued for a while. I didn't go up to investigate. I just opened the Facebook app on my phone. I knew exactly where the next battle would be fought. As expected, 5 minutes later, the community Facebook group exploded. Karen Miller's name flooded the feed. She was like a cornered animal. She didn't type. She unleashed 3 consecutive 60-second voice memos, each one laced with hysterical sobs and rage.
Oh my God, everyone. You have to listen to this. This is insane. That psycho downstairs, I don't know what he did, but he's shooting some kind of weird light into our apartment. My son is screaming his head off. He can't even open his eyes. And he burned a hole in my brand new sofa.
Her voice was thick with indignation, as if she were the victim of a heinous crime. She successfully captured the attention of every nosy neighbor logged on. She followed up with a photo. In the picture, there was indeed a coin-sized, blackened hole on the back of her living room couch. She immediately pointed the finger at me.
It's that guy in 5B. Ethan. It has to be him. He was whining in here the other day about a laser pointer, and I bet this is his sick way of getting revenge. A grown man with a heart the size of a pinhead. Using these kinds of disgusting tricks on a child. Is he even human?
With her photo and tearful testimony, the tide of public opinion instantly turned against me. A few neighbors who didn't know the full story started expressing their sympathy for her and their disgust with me. That's way over the line. You don't do that to a kid, no matter what the disagreement is. This is really disturbing. What kind of person does that? Yeah, he seemed like such a quiet, normal guy. This is actually pretty scary. Kevin Miller then made a timely appearance. He didn't rant like Karen. He posted a carefully worded text comment, trying to sound like the rational one, but it was dripping with threats.
At Ethan Cole, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop this dangerous behavior immediately. If anything happens to my son, I will hold you personally responsible. I'm about to file a police report. What you're doing is assault.
He expertly framed himself as the victim and painted me as a violent criminal. The two of them worked in perfect harmony. In the court of public opinion, I was now the neighborhood psycho. I watched them perform, not typing a single word in my own defense. I was waiting for them to work the crowd into a frenzy, waiting for every eye in the building to be on this drama. And then I would deliver the finishing blow. Once the group's atmosphere had reached a fever pitch, with people calling for the HOA to evict me, I finally made my move. Calmly, I posted a photo. It was a close-up of my ruined German projector screen. The charred black holes looked especially stark under the camera's flash. Next, I posted a short, edited video. The first half was the crystal-clear security footage of Kyle Miller aiming a laser at my screen for an extended period, culminating in the screen smoking and burning through. The second half of the video was a screen recording of my online order, the customs invoice, and a credit card statement with the $2,000 price tag circled in red. Finally, I slowly typed out my response. Hello everyone, this is Ethan from 5B. Regarding Mrs. Miller's post about a weird light, I'd like to clarify a few things. First, as you can see from the video and photos, it was Mr. and Mrs. Miller's son, Kyle, who initiated this by using a high-powered laser to deliberately destroy my personal property, valued at $2,000. Second, I do not have any weird weapons in my apartment, nor am I shooting anything at anyone. After my screen was destroyed, I was feeling a bit paranoid, so I simply hung a new mirror in the same spot for peace of mind. Some people use them for feng shui. I just think it opens up the room. As for why a light might have been reflected into your apartment, I think that's a question for your son. After all, what happens when you shine a flashlight into a mirror is basic physics. Even an elementary schooler should know that. If someone is reckless enough to repeatedly point a dangerous, restricted laser at a neighbor's window, they can't be surprised when it reflects back at them. In fact, you might even say they had it coming. My response, backed by photos, video, and a touch of cold sarcasm, was a bombshell. The Facebook group went dead silent. All the neighbors who had been siding with Karen suddenly had nothing to say. The chain of evidence was airtight. Motive, harassment, crime, destruction of property, proof, video, and damages receipts. I had it all. And my method of retaliation was so beautifully, elegantly legal. I just hung up a mirror. You shined a laser in my home, and it bounced back. How is that my fault? A few minutes later, Karen started spamming the chat in a frenzy.
You're lying. You faked the video. The receipt is a forgery.
But her impotent rage was pathetic against the mountain of digital evidence. Kevin Miller said nothing at all. He knew he had picked a fight with the wrong person. Humiliated in the online battle, Kevin was furious. Since aggression hadn't worked, he decided to try a different kind of pressure. The next afternoon, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw 3 people. Kevin, Mr. Davis from the building's management office, and a woman I didn't recognize in a polo shirt that said HOA board. Great. He brought in reinforcements. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. Mr. Davis, the building manager, wrung his hands and spoke first, looking deeply uncomfortable.
Ethan, look, this whole thing has gotten out of hand. We're all neighbors here, let's try to find some common ground. Kevin's kid made a mistake, he knows that, and he'll have a talk with him. But you have to admit, hanging a giant mirror like that, aimed at someone's window? It creates a lot of glare. It's a bit of a nuisance.
I almost laughed at his choice of words. When science didn't work for them, they pivoted to nuisance complaints. Before I could respond, Kevin, his face a grim mask, spoke in a commanding tone.
I don't care what you call it. Take it down. Now. The glare from that thing is giving my wife headaches. It's disrupting our lives.
I looked straight at him and spoke calmly. First, this is my home. I am legally entitled to hang a mirror on my own wall as decoration. It violates no laws and no building bylaws. Second, a mirror doesn't create light. It only reflects it. If you're being bothered by a reflection, you should ask yourself where the light is coming from in the first place and who is pointing it at my apartment. Third, I paused, my voice turning to ice. Your son, Kyle, deliberately destroyed $2,000 of my property. I have the entire incident recorded on video. So, we can either stand here and talk about your headaches, or we can sit down and talk about how you're going to compensate me for the damages. Or, better yet, we can call the police right now and have them come sort this all out. I'm sure they'd be very interested in my evidence. My voice was quiet, but every word landed like a hammer blow. Kevin's face turned a blotchy, purplish red. He pointed a trembling finger at me and stammered,
You.
but couldn't form a sentence. Mr. Davis, seeing that this mediation was dead on arrival, quickly stepped in.
Okay, let's all just calm down. Then take it easy. Kevin, let's just take a walk. We'll figure something else out.
He practically had to drag Kevin away from my door. I watched them retreat down the hall and let out a cold, humorless laugh. You want to play this game? You have no idea what you're up against. I knew Kevin wouldn't let it go, and I was eagerly waiting for his next idiotic move. Kevin's retaliation came sooner and was far dumber than I ever could have imagined. He was quiet for the next few days. No visits, no posts in the Facebook group. All was calm in the building, but I knew it was the calm before the storm. Sure enough, on Friday night, around 2 a.m., I was woken by a strange scraping sound coming from the roof. It sounded like something heavy being dragged, mixed with the screech of metal on concrete. A knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach. I immediately opened the security camera app on my phone. I'd also installed a small, weatherproof camera on my balcony, aimed up at my window and the exterior wall above it. The footage showed a shocking scene. Two shadowy figures were rappelling from the edge of the roof. One of them, judging by the build and the telltale bald spot, was Kevin Miller. The other was an accomplice. They were actually dangling from ropes, suspended in the middle of the night, like something out of a bad spy movie. Their target was the exterior wall outside my living room, right where my mirror was mounted. I could see Kevin was holding something. It was hard to make out in the dark, but it looked like a hammer. His intention was painfully obvious. He was going to smash my mirror from the outside. I was genuinely stunned by the sheer stupidity of his plan. To destroy a mirror, he was willing to risk his life dangling from the roof of a 30-story building, but he'd miscalculated. For safety, I had previously installed nearly invisible, high-tensile security mesh outside my windows. You could barely see it from the inside, but it was incredibly strong. Kevin and his buddy swung back and forth in the air, unable to get close enough to the wall. The hammer in his hand couldn't reach its target. After several failed attempts, Kevin lost it. He gave up on the mirror and started attacking my window with anything he could get his hands on. On the camera feed, I could see him pulling rocks, even a wrench, from his pockets and hurling them at the glass. Thud! Crack! Thud! The double-paned, tempered glass boomed with the impact. It didn't shatter, but a web of cracks spread across its surface. I watched the face on my screen, twisted with rage and adrenaline, and calmly picked up my phone. This time, I didn't hesitate. I dialed 911. Yes, I'd like to report a crime in progress. I'm at the Lakeshore Residences, Tower A. There are two men rappelling from the roof of the 30th floor. They are currently attempting to break the windows of my apartment, 5B. That's right, they're still hanging up there. Please send someone quickly. I'm worried they might fall. I made sure to emphasize that last part. I knew that any call involving heights and risk of serious injury would get the fastest possible response. After hanging up, I calmly got dressed. It was time to go downstairs and enjoy the show. 11 The police arrived faster than I could have imagined. In less than 10 minutes, 2 squad cars, lights flashing, screamed into the building's driveway. The building security guards, roused by the commotion, came running out to see what was happening. I didn't go down right away. I stood at my window and watched the police and security rush into the lobby. Soon, I heard shouting and a scuffle from the roof. Clearly, Kevin Miller and his friend had been caught red-handed in the middle of their special operation. Only then did I leisurely take the elevator down. When I reached the lobby, Kevin and the other man were in handcuffs, each flanked by a police officer. Their faces were pale, and they were shaking. Kevin, especially, had lost all of his mid-air bravado. The adrenaline had worn off, and seeing me, his eyes filled with a mixture of terror and pure hatred. The lead officer approached me. "Are you Ethan Cole, the person who called?" I nodded. "Yes, officer. They broke my window. I have the entire thing on my security camera." The officer nodded, his expression grim. "We have a preliminary understanding of the situation. We're taking them into custody. We'll need you to come down to the station in the morning to give a formal statement and provide your evidence." Just as Kevin was being led to the squad car, his wife Karen came tearing out of the elevators in her pajamas. She saw the scene, froze for a second, and then launched herself at the police car, screaming and crying.
Why are you arresting my husband? We're the victims here. It was the psycho downstairs who started all of this. Don't you cops care about the facts?
An officer tried to reason with her patiently. "Ma'am, your husband has been arrested on suspicion of reckless endangerment and felony destruction of property. We are enforcing the law. Please step back." But Karen was beyond reason, clinging to the car door and wailing. It was an ugly, pathetic scene. Many of our neighbors, woken by the sirens, were now standing on their balconies, pointing and whispering. This time, the Miller family had lost more than just an argument. They had lost every last shred of their dignity. I didn't stick around to watch the rest. I turned and went back to my apartment. I knew this was no longer just a neighbor dispute. It had escalated to a criminal matter. Kevin wanted to solve this with brute force. Fine. I would use the full force of the law to teach him the lesson of a lifetime. The next morning, I called a lawyer friend of mine. Then, armed with all my evidence, the burned screen, the receipts, the video of Kyle burning it, screenshots of Karen's abusive messages, and the complete, high-definition footage of Kevin's late-night vandalism, I walked into the police station. I decided to press charges and file a civil lawsuit. My demands were simple. 1. Full compensation for my screen, $2,000. 2. Full compensation for the window replacement, which was estimated at $600. 3. $10,000 in punitive damages for harassment and emotional distress. I didn't want an apology. I wanted them to pay in cold, hard cash for their arrogance and stupidity. 12. While the legal process was in motion, my ally, Mr. Peterson from the 17th floor, brought me a startling piece of news. He had come down to my apartment to inspect the damaged window. We were chatting about the Millers when Pete suddenly slapped his forehead.
"Ethan, I just remembered something. Doesn't Kevin Miller have a big, dark wood sculpture near the window in his living room? About 4 feet tall?"
I thought back. I vaguely remembered Karen posting a picture of it in the Facebook group once, bragging that it was from some famous artist and worth a fortune. Mr. Peterson's expression turned serious.
"When I was calculating the reflection angles for you, the focal point of the reflected beam would have been right around that spot. A regular laser pointer wouldn't do much. But that high-powered burning laser you mentioned, that's a whole different story. If that beam was reflected by your mirror and focused on the same spot, especially on something flammable like wood, day after day."
Pete didn't have to finish the sentence. We both understood the implications. We looked at each other, a flicker of shock in our eyes. A wild theory began to form. Karen had complained that the laser had burned a hole in her new sofa. What if that was just the beginning? What if Kyle, being the brat that he was, hadn't just used the powerful laser once? What if the reflected energy had been slowly, steadily cooking that expensive wood sculpture for days? Our theory was confirmed sooner than we could have imagined. A few days later, on a Saturday afternoon, the piercing sound of a fire alarm echoed through the building. A fire truck was parked outside our tower. The community Facebook group lit up. "What's going on? Is there a fire?" "I think it's in Tower A, 6th floor. I can see smoke from the window." "The 6th floor? Isn't that the Miller's apartment?" Soon after, the building manager posted an official notice. A small fire had broken out in Unit 6B. The fire was extinguished, there were no injuries, and the cause was under investigation. According to neighbors who were on the scene, the fire wasn't large, but it had left the entire living room blackened with soot and in complete disarray. The point of origin for the fire was right next to the living room window, and the object that had burned, now a charred stump of charcoal, was the very same sculpture Kevin had been so proud of, the one he claimed was worth over $50,000. The fire department's preliminary report listed the cause of the fire as ignition of wooden materials by an unknown focused heat source. An unknown focused heat source. When I read those words, I almost laughed out loud. What goes around comes around. The Millers used a laser to burn my property. Now, that same laser, in a way they could never have predicted, had come back to burn theirs. It was, I thought, the most perfect kind of justice. 13. The final outcome was exactly what you'd expect. For the charge of felony destruction of property, Kevin Miller avoided jail time, but was sentenced to probation, a hefty fine, and community service. The arrest left a permanent mark on his record. As for my civil suit, the judge ruled swiftly in my favor. Presented with a mountain of incontrovertible evidence, the Millers had no defense. The court ordered them to pay me in full, $2,000 for the screen, $600 for the window, and $10,000 in punitive damages, for a total of $12,600. Their prized wood sculpture, because the fire was determined to have been caused by the actions of their own son, was not covered by their homeowner's insurance. $50,000, gone up in smoke. The 1-2 punch of a criminal record and massive financial loss completely broke the family that had once terrorized the building. The news of Kevin's arrest also damaged his reputation at work, and his business reportedly took a major hit. Less than 6 months later, they quietly sold their condo and moved away. I heard most of the money from the sale went to cover their debts. After they were gone, I finally took down the mirror, my silent, gleaming accomplice. Using the money from the settlement, I bought a brand new German screen, identical to the first, and installed it in its rightful place. As the pristine screen unrolled and the projector cast a clean, perfectly calibrated image onto its surface, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. My world had finally been restored to its proper order. The incident made me something of a legend in the building. The way my neighbors looked at me changed from that quiet guy to something approaching awe. No one dared to leave their trash in the hallway anymore. No one parked in someone else's spot. Everyone knew that a quiet, unassuming guy who understood physics lived in 5B, and he was not to be messed with. I'm no legend. I'm just a regular person who wants to work and live in peace. I never start trouble, but when my boundaries are violated, my property is destroyed, and my dignity is trampled, I will not back down. I simply used a language they could understand to have a conversation on an equal footing. And it turns out that this kind of communication is far more effective than just talking. Outside my window, the Chicago skyline glittered against the night. Inside my living room, the light and shadows danced across my screen, the colors sharp and true. Everything was exactly as it should be.